Good afternoon. This is Piero San Giorgio, author of Survive the Economic Collapse and other books. I'm here today in Abu Dhabi, in the United Arab Emirates. And as you can see, actually cloudy, and it was raining this morning. That's my luck. Whenever I have a half a day available and I want to relax at the swimming pool, no, I have to work. It's because rain, when it happens in the desert countries, it comes quick and very hard, and lots of it. And it's not often. So anyway, I'm here in the United Arab Emirates, very interesting country where I used to do a lot of business in the past when I was in the software industry. And it's always a pleasure to come back. I'm here for some consulting work. As you may or may not know, I do help fairly wealthy people because I have to make a living to think of the strategies on how they can adapt their living to the hypothesis, which I think it's a certainty, but you never know, the hypothesis of an economic collapse, as my books explain more in detail. Anyway, what I like to do when I travel is a small video blog, sort of, which explains why, or rather, what is going to be the impact of an economic collapse in countries that I'm visiting, in this case, the United Arab Emirates. Now, I'm going to do a quick summary of the history, of course. Well, as you may or may not know, in this part of the Arabia Peninsula, behind us, we have the Persian Gulf. This has been a very ancient place of trade. There has been caravans reaching the harbors of Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which is here is a very nice laguna. Abu Dhabi is a very nice, if perhaps less developed, it's in terms of architecture and big city kind of, than Dubai, for example. So the people here always had this aspect of very pragmatic approach of doing business, commerce, and perhaps even piracy in around the area. But certainly they have a down-to-earth pragmatic approach, which is probably perhaps more pragmatic and reasonable than some places like Saudi Arabia or like that. So clearly it's a very enjoyable place, and with oil and the money that flowed since especially the 70s, the idea of developing these places to be big hubs of trade started in the 70s, 80s, and developed big time in the 90s and 2000s to become what most of you have heard about Dubai, you know, these huge buildings, these huge shopping malls with ski slopes inside, the tallest tower in the world, and so on. These incredible feats of human engineering have been financed by a little bit of the gold, of the black gold, and the oil, and of course a little bit by the debt, which was a very interesting approach to not just live off revenues of oil, but also develop the area to make prosperity for the people, which are extremely loyal to their leaders, Sheikh Zayed, Sheikh Mohammed, and many others here. And it's very interesting to see that to do that, they developed a very tolerant approach of Islam, and allowed a lot of foreigners, Americans, Brits, Europeans, French, Germans, and also Australians, and Asian people, and so on, to come here, work, whether because they have very high-level skills, engineers, and so on, businessmen, but also or because they have the labor force, and you know, there's so many people from India, Pakistan, Nepal, Egypt, and so on. In fact, 60% of the people in the Emirates are not Muslim. And so the pragmatic approach to allow for a very tolerant Islam, where you can bring your families, you can enjoy some shopping, you can even have a drink in some places for those who like alcohol, well, made this place very attractive. And of course, the good pay enticed a lot of people to come here and to develop these lands. So one approach would be to say, if one is very critical, would be, well, this is unsustainable, because once they run out of oil, or when the economic collapse hits major areas of the world, like Europe or the United States, North America, or Asia or China, then this place falls down because there's no more people coming, there's no more trade, and so on. It may or may not be completely accurate to say that, because first of all, they have consciousness of of the fact that oil is not going to last forever. In fact, there are some projects, like in Masdar here in Abu Dhabi, to develop cities which are self-sustainable. Now, it's far from 100% sustainable, but clearly they have developed ideas to put a lot of solar panels for generating electricity so that they can desalinize water for consumption, but also for agriculture, because they have they used way too much the aquifers for local agriculture. So clearly they have to move to something else. In terms of trade, well, they want to rely on revenues of trade instead of just oil. So the harbors of Dubai, the big airports that have been built, are allowing to connect East and West, and this is becoming a big hub between Asia and Europe and America. So it's a very successful approach, and I must say that I'm impressed by the Emiratis' approach, and they have been very smart and very successful in bringing in the people that enable that success. So, in management, when you delegate work to others and it's successful, well, that's the way to do it. You cannot do everything on your own. And now, especially the Emiratis are, of course, they've also been very smart to educate themselves in many European universities around the world, in Europe, in America, and also they kept their tribal identity intact. So there's only 10% of the people living in this country, in the Emirates, that are Emirati. Everybody else is foreigner, but they don't have much rights. If you don't have a job, you have to go away. If you're not welcome, they send you away. If you cannot just become an Emirati like all these crazy Europeans. They naturalize everyone and their camel coming from all over the world. This is crazy. I mean, a European is a European. You're not French because you're born in Africa and just living in France. This makes no sense. This will lead to civil war sooner or later. Anyway, some people are crazy. Some countries and civilizations become crazy. Here, no, they are still sane. You cannot be an Emirati. And that's the way it is. It's their land, it's their law, and it's their religions. And they want to keep it that way, and yet they're able to open and make it extremely successful and extremely enjoyable to live here. Actually, I do encourage a lot of people in Europe and America, if you're a Muslim living in Europe, go away, live here. This is much better. Whatever is your job, if you have skills, sell them in here. I mean, make your living and make money here. Makes sense. Anyway, no. So the approach, why do I always go into culture and history? Is because it shapes the way the countries are, and you have to add, of course, as usual, geography. And of course, this is a sea open. It's land that is open on the sea, but it's also a desert, and you can quickly see about 100 yards, 100 meters away from the beach, you get into the desert, and there's a lot of problems with the desert. First of all, that it's very hard to have water. It's very hard to grow food, and certainly you cannot sustain millions of people that are living today in the Emirates with the food that is produced in the few oases and areas where there's irrigation. Even if you can provide desalinized water with energy production from oil or solar panels, you will still require a lot of imports. So in terms of economic crisis, yes, the place is vulnerable to scarcity of food and water. Energy, for the moment, they have quite a lot, enough. Actually, they consume way too many. There's way too much waste of energy in terms of electricity for air conditioning and so on. In terms of infrastructure, I remember my father used to come here in the 70s and 80s to sell computers. And he was telling me and showing photographs, and you can see some of the photographs from even earlier times in the museums, for example, in the museum in Dubai, which is very nice, how it was at the time. And there's only one road, one small track from Abu Dhabi to Dubai and little buildings. And in the 70s, they have the first paved roads. They started to build the first tall high rise, which was probably 10 floors. Now you have 700 meters high tall buildings. The Burj Khalifa Tower. It's huge. And the infrastructure that's been built is now moving towards more public transport, because they really didn't rely on that, and it was only a car-based transport systems, for example, with lots of highways, roads, and so on. Now they're starting to build the metros and railways, and this is the way to go, because you can be more sustainable with that. Now, once you cover the problem of agriculture and water, of course, then comes the idea, and energy, then comes the idea of how people can become resilient on themselves, whether you're an expat living here or whether you're an Emirati. Now, the problem with that is that, first of all, you have to assume that the Emiratis, in case of crisis, they want to keep you here. So the skills that you have need to be very important. So probably you need to be in the military, probably you need to have engineering skills that are not easy to have. If you're a waiter in a restaurant and the economy falls down, you probably get kicked out and you have to go back to Pakistan, Thailand, or the Philippines or Nepal, which is the way it's going to be. And probably you have to think how you build in your hometown, in your home place, in your home country, the resilience that you need in case you are in trouble. Now, if you can't stay here, or if you're an Emirati, and of course this is your land and you will stay here, well, then you have to think about how the house you live in terms of individual resilience, can withstand an economic collapse or even an economic slowdown. There was a big slowdown here in 2008, 2010. These 2 years were very difficult for this area, especially in Dubai, which is much more crazy in development than Abu Dhabi. It's developed much faster, and they went with crazy projects that had to stop. Now, remember the Palm Island, which is an amazing feat of engineering also. Now, if you want to be resilient yourself, you really have to think, okay, the geography, of course, the climate. The desert climate is very brutal. It's very hot in the summer. I'm just unlucky to be the only week in the year that there is heavy rains, and actually there was a storm this morning, quite impressive. And of course, then you have to see how trade can keep going, how you can keep importing goods that you need, and maybe what happens if this stops. Well, maybe you can smuggle stuff with Iran and India and so on, but how long will that stay? So maybe there's going to be a different business in terms of trade and imports. In terms of security, you have to think of what's happening because if you have harbors, people can come with ships and steal your stuff. Steal your oil, steal your stuff, steal your materials, your factories. This has happened in history. I mean, piracy is a big problem in a lot of countries today. So you have to think about that. So defense is very important in terms of individual, but also in terms of countries. How you protect this land from people who want to steal stuff in case of difficult times. United States, worldwide armies and fleets will not stay around for forever and for long. So how will you cope in case things go bad? But also perhaps, piracy from the land, as it was in the old days. These countries were Islamized very quickly, also because probably they didn't want to have raids from the tribes that are deeper in the desert, and that may resume. Although I do find it more likely to have raids from the sea. Now. So defense and the social link to end. This is a big chapter in my books. How you build the resilience with other people. How you build connections with people that help each other. Now, the good thing about Emiratis is that they know each other. They're cousins. They are friends, brothers. They are a people, and therefore they know each other, and therefore they will help each other in difficult times. And of course, for the expats here, they need to find a place to stay in case of difficult time and to make themselves very useful. As you know, it may not be a total collapse of the economies. It may be a partial collapse, and things will become difficult for many, but not necessarily. This is not Mad Max. I'm not talking about world looking like in the movies. This is a more realistic approach of what economic collapse look like. It's like Greece. It's like places like Russia when the Soviet Union collapses. So these are elements that you have to think: geography, the culture, the history, the people, and work on yourself, work on your own capacity to connect with people, to build resilience, to build autonomy. And then, talk to the government, talk to the people, make them hire people like me to help them to build resilience. And there's thousands of people who are really good at setting up self-sufficiency for electric systems, power generation, desalination of water, better ecology, better management of the ecosystems. There's a lot of things that can be done, and this is a country that has the money, that has the brains to do it. So I like it. I like this place, and I hope it will be successful in the future. And I hope you prepare yourselves if you live here, or if you plan to live here. And with that, I say farewell and prepare yourselves. And maybe if you read my books in this place, maybe you organize a conference. I'll be happy to come back, as I do quite often. And I'll see you soon. Take care.